In this problem, we are asked to find all extrema, and there's not an interval given. Therefore, we are not going to be finding absolute, just relative. So the first thing I have to do is make a sign chart in order to find relative extrema. So the first thing I'm going to do is find the derivative. And this is a quotient, so I have to use the quotient rule. So low d high minus high d low all over low low. And then I need to simplify because I'm going to make a sign chart and it'll be easier to find solutions if I simplify. So distribute the 4, give me 4x squared plus 4, and then 4x times 2x is 8x squared. And then I'll combine my like terms, so it'll be negative 4x squared plus 4 over x squared plus 1 squared. And when we are trying to make a sign chart, I want to find where the derivative is equal to 0 and where it's undefined. So when I have a quotient where the numerator equals 0, the derivative is 0. And where the denominator is 0 is where the derivative is undefined. So I can solve for those separately and get all my critical values. So on the left-hand side, solving for 0, the first thing I need to do is factor out a negative 4. And that's enough so that I can easily tell that the solution is x equals plus or minus 1. And then over here, if I have x squared plus 1, the only way that this could equal 0 is if I could make x squared equal negative 1. Well, if I square a number, it'll never be negative. So therefore, this could never equal 0. So the derivative is never undefined. So my only critical values are plus and minus 1. Creating my sign chart for the derivative, I'll label it. And so now I have to pick test values to the left and right of each of these critical values. So to the left of negative 1 is negative 2. In the middle would be 0. And then to the right of 1 would be 2. And now I have to test them into my derivative to find the sign. Is it positive or is it negative? So I don't actually have to evaluate, just figure out if it's positive or negative. And when I plug in up here, if I plug in a negative 2 squared would be 4, and then 4 times negative 4 is negative 16, so my numerator would be negative. When I plug it into the denominator will always be positive because I'll square it here and then I'll square it again. So I'll have negative over positive, which gives me negative. When I plug in 0, this whole term would equal 0. So 4 over positive would be positive. And when I plug in a 2, it'd be the same outcome as negative 2 because it's being squared. So I'd have a negative over a positive, which means positive. No, excuse me, negative. So it would go negative, positive, negative, which means I go from decrease to increase and increase to decrease. So this will be a relative minimum and this will be a relative maximum. So relative min at x equals negative 1, relative maximum at x equals 1. Now, always go back and make sure that you actually found what they were asking for. So it said find all extrema, which means they want the extreme values, which means they want the corresponding y values. So I told where it is, but not what it is. So I have to evaluate the original at f of negative 1 and f of 1 to find the actual maximum and minimum, relative maximum and minimum. So plugging in negative 1, that gives me negative 4 over 2, which is negative 2. And then plugging in 1 would give me 4 over 2, which is 2. So my relative minimum is -2 and my relative maximum is 2. Now, these could be the absolutes, but we would have to investigate further. So based on what we did, that's the only conclusion we can draw, is that we know they're relative.